In 2010, a very scary story happened on the Unza River, a tributary of the Volga. A woman named Vera was swimming in the river when she suddenly noticed something weird approaching her. This something swam up to her, bumped into her leg, and then she felt a sharp pain. If this happened in the sea, one could suspect that it was a shark, but this happened in the river. Turns out it wasn't a shark, but a huge catfish who decided to eat the woman. The fish sank its teeth into the woman's leg and didn't let go until people forced it to retreat. Later, doctors discovered more than 20 minor wounds on the injured leg, all left by fish teeth. This could cause infection and damage to the ligamentous apparatus, bleeding, vascular injuries. Just think about it. A catfish did all this. The fish that's supposed to be chilling at the bottom. And if you start to dig deeper, it becomes clear that catfish attacks happen much more often than you would hope. Some of the stories are actually frightening. In the 60s, not far from the Russian city of Khabarovsk, a huge catfish not only attacked a person, but also dragged him underwater. I don't know how the story ended, but the locals had to ask the military for help. It seems to me that the key reason why catfish act like that lies in their diet. Catfish eat everything. Seriously. They don't even care what species they're having for dinner. Every now and then you hear stories about a catfish dragging a dachshund to the bottom or biting a kid. Yes, it does sound like an urban legend. The thing is, there's actually tons of evidence of catfish swallowing ducklings in the spring and even drowning adult ducks. Rats also become their prey. Catfish are also smart enough to assess their strengths and even come up with strategies. Young catfish team up to hunt pigeons that fly in shallow water. Although they never do this when they grow up, larger individuals track prey for a long time before attacking. The stomachs of catfish caught in France are often full of undigested bird legs. That is, these are not isolated cases. Catfish actually prey on pigeons. Naturally, even for the largest catfish, a human being is too large of a prey, but this doesn't mean the catfish won't attack humans. For example, to protect their eggs.
He's touching my child! You are touching the child! No!
And I'm not exaggerating when I say there are many stories of terrible catfish attacks. A large catfish has long lived in a reservoir near the Russian city of Lipat. According to eyewitnesses, it was a really huge creature that devoured all the inhabitants of the reservoir, and even dogs that accidentally ended up in the water. One day, that catfish even ate a pig who was puddling around in shallow water. The fish that ate a pig. Can you imagine that? Now let's remember a very disturbing fact. Pigs and humans are very alike, and even genetically compatible. Does this mean we should be careful around catfish too? Well, maybe. Steve found out that sometimes they find human fingers in the stomachs of caught catfish. No, catfish don't bite them off from living people. They don't mind the drowned ones, though. The more decomposed the body is, the softer it becomes and the stronger it smells. And catfish really love this. But this doesn't mean catfish will grow to appreciate the taste of human flesh and start eating living people. However, in some reservoirs with a large number of catfish, they introduced a swimming ban. Why do you think they did it? Well, probably not because the authorities are afraid that someone will accidentally step on the catfish and slip. And as it usually happens, the omnivorous animal gets a nice bonus from nature and begins to spread literally everywhere at a terrible rate. A few decades ago, near Cologne, fishermen were surprised, yet happy, when they started to reel in catfish. Seemed like that was proof of how clean the water in the river was. But then the number of catfish began to soar. Every year, there were more of them. In 2010, more than 14 tons of catfish were caught in the Rhine. Moreover, catfish not only bred at a terrible rate in one region, they also spread to other water bodies. Today, catfish can be found throughout entire Europe. Until recently, Scandinavia was the only catfish-free place, simply because it was too cold there. Temperature, by the way, is one of the reasons catfish spread so fast. Catfish are thermophilic, so they multiply so fast due to industrialization and global warming. Well, it's always the reason. Also, people purposely release catfish fry so that they grow up and they can catch them later. Who knew the catfish would start catching humans? Oh, and don't forget these fish live long. Of course, not as long as the Greenland sharks, but the 5-foot-long catfish can be about 40 years old. The age of the largest caught catfish is estimated at 70 years. Its length reached almost 6.6 feet. Do you realize how big that is? Being this huge, you can easily eat whatever you want. In short, apparently, the catfish keeps growing all its life without any limitations, and the bigger the catfish gets, the more it eats. People who don't know catfish can grow to incredible size often think they get so big due to radiation. Well, what else is to blame? Radiation and pollution, especially given that giant catfish were found in the cooling pond of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, though actually radiation has nothing to do with it. First, it usually works in exactly the opposite way. Animals get sick and die before they can get big enough. Second, the species caught in Chernobyl are supposed to be large. Originally. Moreover, there's evidence of catching the same catfish in regions with no radiation. The catfish there were actually even larger. Radioactive catfish are just lucky creatures that have plenty of food and no predators around. Most likely, in a couple of decades, they'll become even bigger. Of course, the bigger the catfish, the larger its prey. Why waste energy and time catching some small fish when you can eat something more nutritious? That's why catfish eat almost anything that they can fit in their mouths. It all starts quite harmlessly, with annelid worms, gastropods, crustaceans, and insects. But as soon as the catfish grows up, frogs, fish, and even other catfish appear on its menu. The diet of gigantic catfish includes birds, small mammals like dogs, and even sheep. They swallow them whole. And catfish can afford all that. Not only because of the size, as I said, catfish are smart enough to come up with different hunting strategies. They do realize very well what they're doing. And besides, nature has blessed catfish with everything they need for hunting. For example, they have a well-developed sensitivity which allows them to sense the vibration of prey. Catfish are great at adapting to new food sources when they appear. That is, they're happy to expand their menu. You can't be close to a catfish and hope it doesn't eat you because you're new here. Catfish also adopt new hunting strategies when needed, such as catching pigeons from the land. They also analyze the migration paths of salmon or herring, even if they see them for the first time, and then take a convenient position to hunt, and their hunting is successful. Well, I think I've already mentioned catfish can team up in order to chase prey. Overall, it seems like if you live in water, the only way to escape the catfish that think you'll make a good dinner is to stop breathing. Fish of the Platosis genus live in the Indian Ocean, the Western Pacific Ocean, and New Guinea. They say their tails look like those of eels, but their long barbels sticking out from their faces are much more interesting. They house taste buds that allow the fish to detect chemicals in the water around them. They are so sensitive they can pick up the smallest changes in the acidity of the water. For example, those produced by the breathing of the bristleworms. Just exhale, and that's it, the catfish has found you. Thanks to this ability, these fish can hunt even in complete darkness. Oh, by the way, ever heard of noodling? It's a way of catching catfish using your bare hands. A person puts his hand into the catfish hole underwater and pulls it out. But it's much more complicated than it seems. First, the noodler fumbles for the hole in the water. If everything goes according to plan, the catfish grabs the noodler's hand, after which the noodler pulls the catfish out with both hands. Well, I don't even know what could possibly go wrong here, especially considering everything I've already told you about catfish. The biggest danger for a noodler is the risk of drowning. The water's too deep, and you don't have a friend around to help. A large catfish can keep you underwater for much longer than you can hold your breath. You also need to be physically strong and hardy enough because the catfish will fight back. Even a fish weighing about 66 pounds will become a formidable opponent. Remember, this fish is in its element, and it's capable of eating a sheep. With just one blow, a catfish is quite capable of fracturing a person's ribs. And if at this time you're trying your best to hold your breath and not drown, then, well, things aren't looking great for you. So no wonder noodling is considered a very dangerous activity compared to other ways of fishing. It can literally kill people. There are occasional news reports covering this. Perhaps catfish kill many more people than we know. People who faced an aggressive catfish say that its bite is similar to the bite of a teething puppy. But don't think it's painless. Catfish may not have fangs, but they do have maxillary teeth. Thick rows of inward curving barbs designed to let food in but not out. When clamped on a human's arm, catfish also have a nasty tendency to bear down and spin. like a sharpener on a pencil. This can result in tearing skin off. Let me remind you, these guys love carrion, and their teeth aren't exactly clean. Just when you start realizing that encountering an ordinary catfish is not the best thing that could happen to you, you learn about electric catfish. They can generate a shock of up to 350 volts to stun unsuspecting prey. However, the catfish themselves are not only immune to their own discharges, seems like they can't be shocked at all. Props to evolution for this immunity. Not so long ago, scientists compared the response of electric catfish and goldfish to various stimuli, observing the movements of fish after exposure to electrical discharges from another catfish and electrodes. While the goldfish were severely electrocuted by the electric catfish and completely immobilized by the electrodes, the electric catfish seemed to be completely unaffected by any of the shocks. I'm not even sure it noticed them. Why is this happening? So far, no one knows. Though we know for sure that people have not yet become victims of electric catfish. A large catfish can only stun a person. Well, remember that catfish keep growing all their lives. Who knows? Maybe there's a catfish somewhere that's big enough to kill a human. See you later.